Senior Hamas official and leader of the negotiating team to Egypt, Khalil al-Hayya, says that the group needs, quote, real guarantees of a lasting ceasefire as part of any deal to return the remaining 48 hostages still under captivity in Gaza. Indirect peace talks between Israel and Hamas in the Egyptian Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh have entered their third day as momentum picks up on U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed peace plan. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati says the talks are progressing.
في مدينة شرم الشيخ في مدينة السلام مفاوضات بين الجانبين الإسرائيلي والفلسطيني للعمل على التوصل إلى اتفاق حول المرحلة الأولى من هذا الاتفاق من خلال العمل على إطلاق سراح الرهائن وعدد من الأسرى الفلسطينيين وإعادة انتشار القوات الإسرائيلية لتهيئة المناخ على الأرض لإتمام خطوة إطلاق سراح الرهائن.
Qatar, a longtime mediator between Israel and Hamas, raised an opposing viewpoint, citing major obstacles ahead.
العقبات الآن هي في التطبيق، وبالتالي يجب أن ننشغل جميعا بإيجاد حالة عملية في التطبيق تضمن أن يكون التطبيق سريعا، ولكن القضية التي لا تحتمل القسمة على اثنين هو أن الشأن الفلسطيني هو شأن فلسطيني أولا وأخيرا، وأن مستقبل الشعب الفلسطيني يجب أن يكون بأيدي فلسطينية.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his cabinet is fully behind Trump's plan, which calls for the release of all hostages, the disbandment of Hamas, and for Gaza to be placed under international governance. Trump said earlier this week that he believes that there is a really good chance of reaching a lasting deal soon.
Israelis are marking 2 years since thousands of Hamas-led militants poured into southern Israel on 7 October 2023, killing about 1,200 people and taking some 251 others hostage. In central squares in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, thousands of people gathered on Tuesday to remember the dead and called for the release of hostages.
2 years ago, my aunt was murdered outside her house in Kibbutz Be'eri, and my cousin was taken hostage to Gaza. 11 months later, she was executed by Hamas.
Nearly 400 Israelis were killed and dozens abducted from the Nova Music Festival in the border community of Rem. At the site of the Nova Festival attack, people embraced memorials garnished with flowers, tributes, and candles. Over the last 2 years, the venue has emerged as a memorial site with portraits of the kidnapped and the fallen.
זה הפקרות ממש. הפתיעו אותנו בסדר. בצד אמרו להם שבאים מחבלים, אבל כבר בא מטוס, ראו אנשים, ראו מחבלים, אף אחד לא עשה כלום.
Though there was no official ceremony due to the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, which coincides with the anniversary, the Israeli government plans to hold an official ceremony of the anniversary next week.
Embattled French President Emmanuel Macron is facing mounting political pressure as outgoing Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu attempts one final round of negotiations to stave off a deepening political crisis. Lecornu proposed that discussions focus on two urgent matters: adopting a budget and the future of New Caledonia. He also confirmed he would meet each political party between Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday morning. The effort marks Macron's last-ditch attempt to keep the government functioning after Lecornu's resignation on Monday, just 27 days after taking office, the shortest tenure for a French prime minister in modern history. But key opposition figures on France's far right and far left have rejected the bid, and two of Macron's former prime ministers have now distanced themselves from him as well. The latest developments underline the president's increasingly isolated position, even among his allies.
Less than a year after the landmark verdict in a drugging and rape trial that shook France and turned Gisèle Pelicot into a global icon, Pelicot on Monday testified at a courthouse for the appeal of a man convicted in her case. Hussemetin Dogan, sentenced to 9 years in prison last December, denies he intended to rape Pelicot. He argues that he was deceived by Giselle Pellico's ex-husband, who drugged his wife and offered her to strangers online before filming the assaults. The 44-year-old construction worker went on trial Monday in Nimes, southern France, on charges of aggravated rape by administering substances that impair judgment or self-control, an offense carrying up to 20 years in prison. He remains free pending a verdict, but prosecutors had sought 12 years at his first trial. Pellico entered the courthouse under police escort, smiling as she shook hands with supporters who shouted words of encouragement. While last year's trial stretched over 4 months, the retrial is scheduled to last no more than 4 days, with a verdict expected on Thursday.
The Bulgarian Elenite resort has been closed by authorities after heavy rain caused floods to sweep through the seaside town last week. The decision comes amid forecasts of more heavy rainfall in the region.
Това се получаваше на всеки 7 години. 99-2006 имаше един лек пропуск, отървахме се, но сега нямаше как. Бях на 10 минути пред потопа, който се движи срещу мене. Това, че жена ми се обади да отида си взема детето от градина. Тя ме спаси.
The resort will reopen once the heavy rain subsides. The floods that have swept through villages on the Black Sea coast since last week have claimed 3 lives and forced hundreds to evacuate their homes. Bulgarian authorities declared a state of emergency in several towns, where regional public transport was halted due to flooded roads after days of extreme rainfall.
Canada's Prime Minister met in Washington with US President Donald Trump to discuss US tariffs on Canadian imports. Mark Carney's main goal in the visit is to strengthen relations ahead of the planned renegotiation of a free trade agreement between the two countries next year.
We are the second largest trading partner of the United States. We do a lot of trade going across the border where we're cooperating, first thing. Secondly, we are the largest foreign investor in the United States.
After the meeting, Trump issued a cordial statement calling Carney an excellent leader who could represent him anywhere. He, however, added that trade issues still represent a conflict between the two countries. In March, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, raising it to 35% in August. Some Canadian imports are exempt under other agreements. The key question now is whether US tariffs on steel and aluminium will be reduced next year. Canada remains an important trading partner for the United States, but analysts do not expect a major change to the tariff situation.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he is prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act, if needed, to restore law and order in U.S. cities run by Democrats who refuse his deployment of National Guard troops. The move comes after a judge temporarily blocked the Trump deployment in Portland, inspiring Illinois and Chicago to follow suit and file legal challenges. Illinois' Democrat Governor J.B. Pritzker says his state's lawsuit seeks to fight back against what he called Trump's declared war on Chicago. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, the U.S. president highlighted the need to restore stability to these cities, which he says have become infested with crime. Trump added that his administration will resort to the rarely used Insurrection Act as a last-ditch effort if courts and lawmakers continue to block and delay his plans. The Insurrection Act is a law passed in 1807, which allows the incumbent president to mobilize U.S. military to carry out civilian law enforcement duties under certain conditions. It was last used back in 1992 by former President George H.W. Bush to suppress the deadly Los Angeles riots. Trump says he's committed to, quote, making America safe again, and vowed to continue his efforts to clean up the cities he called hellholes worse than Afghanistan.
'cause my ring is a pearl. Sun swallowed by clouds. Look